Rosalia Bollen joins us now live from Rafah in Gaza. She's a spokesperson for UNICEF. Rosalia, we had a little clip from you in our package yesterday, and to be honest, you sounded so upset in it. And I know that aid workers like yourself are so resilient, are so tough, but honestly, you sounded at your wits' end. How are you? How are your colleagues dealing with this?
It's been a terrifying night and day for everyone, really. Yesterday, we now know that at least 130 children are among those killed, and that makes yesterday's attacks really one of the bloodiest in this war. People were killed in their tents. Schools that have turned into shelters have been bombed, and it's once more a very horrible illustration of the fact that nowhere in Gaza is safe. These attacks have also taken place throughout Gaza, from the most northern part up to the south, and it's just heart-wrenching that we're back at this point. Children have lived through 15 months of relentless violence. They've been exposed to things that no child should ever be exposed to. But not just that, children have been acutely aware of the fact that no place in Gaza has been safe. The children I've met over these past 6 months have spoken to me about being afraid of dying, being afraid that their parents would die. They've been in a state of very toxic stress and anxiety, and that will also potentially impact their emotional development, and it may even have physical impacts on their tiny bodies. I've actually seen countless children just starting to tremble the moment that a drone approaches. Children start crying, calling for their parents. They try to seek cover. They're in deep distress, and they shouldn't be put through this again. They should have never been put through this in the very first place. So we need an immediate reinstatement of the ceasefire, but we also need the crossings to reopen to aid, because since the beginning of this month, organizations like UNICEF have been unable to pick up any assistance at the crossing, or any assistance stationed right outside of Gaza has been blocked.
I'm just going to pick you up. You said out of the 400 people that we understand were killed in Tuesday's attack, 130 of them are children. That is simply a staggering number, Rosalia. And you're talking there about some of the physical and mental impacts on children. Do you feel like they're responding this time because they have such a full knowledge of what may well lie ahead, because they've experienced 15 months of this? They know what could be just round the corner coming for them.
I mean, for sure, people are very fearful. Parents have spoken to me about being afraid of what the immediate future will hold for them. And here in Al Mawasi, there's actually quite a few families who have gone back to their original homes in northern Gaza and eastern Khan Yunis, but others have stayed. And some of those families who have stayed have told me that they prefer to stay here in spite of the difficult conditions. But they say the situation has just been too uncertain, and they don't want to go back to their homes and then risk being displaced again. That's actually exactly what's happening right now. We've seen evacuation orders, displacement orders issued yesterday for certain parts of northern Gaza, for instance, Beit Hanun, and also for eastern Khan Yunis here in the south. And we see people moving yet again from the homes they had just found back during the ceasefire. So it's been a couple of weeks that people have returned to their homes, or what's left of it, and now they are on the move yet again.
As you say, there's just simply no good option, no good choices available to these people. How quickly is the humanitarian situation devolving back into what we had before the ceasefire in January? How quickly is it getting worse? You've talked about cuts to rations, of course, a lack of water as well.
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating to see that the gains we had made in the first couple of weeks of the ceasefire are now being very quickly erased. In those first 6 weeks, we actually had been able to really substantially scale up the inflow of aid supplies into Gaza, and those supplies have been reaching children and their families. But all of that is being undone because of the aid blockades and because of these bombardments and because of the cuts of electricity to a water desalination plant here in southern Gaza. That water desalination plant was providing drinking water to hundreds of thousands of people in the south and central part of Gaza. Aid organizations have been working around the clock throughout the ceasefire to get as many supplies in as possible, but also to get those supplies to the people who need them the most. So we haven't been using the aid parcels brought in to build up a large stock in our warehouses. That would simply not make any sense because of the needs that are staggering, the needs of families. So whenever we could, we have been distributing these supplies. We still have some reserves in our warehouse, but they're being very, very quickly depleted. And it's important, therefore, that the crossings open as soon as possible. We also see an impact on the markets of the blockade. Nothing has entered Gaza since the beginning of the month, and that includes fresh produce. And for instance, fruit has disappeared from the markets. Fruits nowhere to be found across Gaza anymore. You see canned food, you see some vegetables. Meat is also really, really difficult to find. And that means that we're now going back to scenarios we found ourselves in during the war, where there was hardly any produce available, fresh produce. And that has led to an increase in acute malnutrition among children in Gaza. So that's a scenario that we should avoid returning to at all costs now that we've finally been making some really important gains.
Rosalia, nothing but respect for you and everything your colleagues at UNICEF do. Thank you so much, Rosalia Bollen, for joining us on TRT World.